Sometimes you'll get set back to spring forward. Sometimes the universe will remind you that you need to move. All you gotta do is say all you gotta do. Hey y'all, so these are the points I'm going to be talking about today. So I'm going to make chapters, so do with that information what you will. So let's get started. So December 31st was New Year's Eve. It was a typical New Year's Eve. We lightly partied as we always do. Corbel-ish for champagne. No Ciroc, nothing hard or nothing like that. January 1st, when I got up, first of all, I slept in way later than I normally do. And I felt like I had a hangover. So I had like a mild headache. I've definitely had that before. So I didn't think anything of it. I went on throughout my day. I didn't feel no type of way or nothing like that. I just had that little underlying headache where it was like when I thought about the headache, I felt the headache and it was very, very mild. I wasn't going to take nothing for it because normally when I have headaches like that, they end up going away. So now let's get into the signs. So December 2nd, I went to bed at about 2:49 a.m. It really was, because I was like, it's 2:49, I need to go to bed. I got up about 5 a.m. and I went to the bathroom. I went back to sleep until like 9:30. When I got up at 9:30, what I immediately realized or noticed was I felt groggy. Like I felt real groggy, and my left hand felt very heavy. Very, very heavy, but it was like I still wanted to just like roll over and go back to sleep because at the base of it, I was still sleepy. So I decided, okay, you know what? We're going to get up because that's what we need to get up and do because we already up now. So like I start off, every day when I rise up, I give thanks. But this time when I went to give thanks, I noticed that my tongue felt heavy. And so when I started to talk, I was like, what the hell is going on? So I'm thinking maybe my body is still just kind of waking up, so I'm not really finna trip. So I continued to feel weird. My left hand continued to feel weird. So I grabbed the mirror that was close to me, and something in my head was like, smile. Now when I smiled, it wasn't my regular smile. So let's get into the symptoms. So when I got up on December 2nd, my symptoms were I had a droop. This part of my face smiled, this part did not. My hand was very heavy and it was numb. So I couldn't move my hand the way that I would normally move my hand. So the first thought in my mind literally was mama. So I picked up the phone, I called my mom. So my mom came, she came into my room. And I told her, I'm like, I think I got Bell's palsy. And she's like, oh my God, smile, let me see what's going on. And she was like, yep, that looks like Bell's palsy. I've had Bell's palsy before. So that's probably what it is, but you need to go to urgent care in order for them to like diagnose you with Bell's palsy and stuff like that. Like you really don't want to be around, just sitting around the house like this. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm like, let me get dressed. She's like, well, can you walk? I'm like, sure, I can walk. So I got up, I walked fine. So I went to get dressed. When I went to get dressed, I realized that I couldn't button my pants up, and it was very difficult for me to put my pants on. I rarely, I sleep how I sleep, so I did need to put on like undies and stuff like that. It's very difficult for me to put my underwear on. It was like my brain wasn't connected with what my hands would do naturally to put my underwear on. So I'm like, oh fuck. So then I'm like, okay, well let me put my bra on. So I get the underwear on. I put my bra on. I try to put my bra on. I can't get the coordination with my left hand and the left side of my bra together. So my mom ended up having to help me put my bra on. She also had to help me button my pants up. Like she put my bra on and she buttoned my pants up. It was like that. So I'm like, okay, well let me brush my teeth before we leave to go to urgent care, because I'm like, we going outside, so let me brush my damn teeth. That was one of the most challenging things that I've ever done in my whole entire life, was trying to brush my teeth. When it came to spit out like the toothpaste and stuff like that, it was virtually impossible. It took a lot for me to just get my tongue together to even push out the toothpaste, for me to be able to just like rinse my mouth out so that I could be done. I kept dropping everything that went into my left hand on the floor. So I dropped my toothbrush, I dropped the toothpaste, I dropped my deodorant and all of that stuff. So my mom put a basket on the toilet. So she's like, just use your right hand, because my right hand worked fine to put the stuff in there. I'm like, okay. So I did all of that. So I went to urgent care. So I go to urgent care. And urgent care is like, okay, well, let's see what's going on with you. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, but I gotta use the bathroom. So they're like, okay, well, since you're about to urinate anyway, let's give us a sample. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I go to give them a sample, and I held the cup in my left hand because still in my mind, I'm still doing things the way that I would regularly do them, and regularly I could hold things in both my hands. When I tell y'all, I was trying to give a sample and I dropped the urine cup in the toilet because it slipped out of my left hand because I didn't feel it in my left hand because my left hand was numb. So I felt awful. I told her that I dropped the cup in the toilet. She was like, oh, it's okay. I felt so bad about that because I'm like, a freaking cup is in y'all toilet now. I don't know if y'all toilet is broke. I don't know. So I was telling the doctor that my mom saw my symptoms and we both agreed that I needed to go to urgent care just to kind of check it out, even though in our minds it was going to be Bell's palsy because it's like, what the hell else could it have been? So I was talking to the doctor, and the doctor was like, you know, because you have the face droopiness and you have the weakness on your left side, I feel like you need to have more testing, and we're not equipped to have testing here, so I want to call 911. I'm like, okay, fine. My brother was there with me. He was such a huge help. He kept my mother posted on everything that was going on. So she called 911. The ambulance came and they took me to South Suburban Hospital through the emergency room. So now let's talk about treatment. So once I get to the emergency room, they gave me a lot of tests during my whole stay. I got admitted into the hospital on the 2nd. I got released on yesterday. It's January 6th right now when I'm doing this. I got released yesterday on the 5th in the evening. So the first test that they did was a CT scan. The CT scan came out clean, like clear. They didn't see anything on a CT scan. So I got this stuff written on here. So I'm just trying to go through it. So the first thing they did, like I said, they did a CT scan. The CT scan came out fine. They didn't see anything in the CT scan. It was like, okay, so we don't know what the hell is going on, but we're going to admit you so that we can try to see what was going on. So they took some urine and they were testing the urine and all of that stuff. So they had taken blood samples, and so the blood samples came back that I was severely anemic, which I already knew because I've always been anemic, and at times I do get severely anemic. So on top of everything else that was going on, I also needed a blood transfusion. So the first day of my stay, they had me do a cardiac bubble test. So the results came back on the cardiac bubble test where they didn't find anything. So they're like, we don't see any kind of heart abnormalities or anything like that on the cardiac bubble test. So I'm like, okay, cool. So that next day, they sent me to do a MRI. So they did what was it? A cardiac angiogram with contrast. So it was literally like almost like an hour-long MRI. I want to say it was about 45 minutes or something like that. They had wanted to do a different test, but I'm allergic to betadine, so they weren't able to do it. So they did the MRI, the cardiac angiogram with contrast, and so we waited for the results for that. So when the results came back from that, it showed that there was a spot on my brain on the right center where a stroke had occurred. Now let me go back just a little bit. So when I went to the hospital, when I went to urgent care, I had the face droopiness, I had the weakness on the left side, I couldn't hold anything in my left hand, I did feel weird, I had slurred speech and all of that. My mind was right, but the words that were coming out of my mouth were not coming out correctly. It was almost like my tongue felt very, very heavy, and it was just difficult to do regular things that I regularly would do. By the time I got into the ER, I started getting feeling back in my hand. So I wasn't even able to do this when I went to urgent care. When I got to the ER, I was able to move all of my fingers and ball my fist up and all of that stuff. I still had the hand numbness, but I was still able to do things with my hand. About an hour into my stay in the emergency room, my face went back to normal. My speech went back to normal. My hand function went back to normal. I was able to button up my pants. I could undo my bra and stuff if I needed to because I knew I was able to button up my pants. So all of my symptoms that I had when I got up and when I went to urgent care had dissipated about an hour into the time that I got into the ER. So that's why they classified it as a TIA. And basically what that is a mini stroke. Different from regular stroke that everybody's familiar with, because your body or your functions normally go back, well, a lot of times go back to the way that they were before, and the symptoms that you have do not last. And so they classified it as that. So now we're on a journey to figure out why this happened. So being severely anemic and mini strokes or TIAs, they really go together like peanut butter and jelly. I did not know that. I did not know that until I did some research. So the gynecologist was saying that because I was having super heavy cycles, that was causing me to become severely anemic, and they're thinking that it was a correlation between the two. However, they simply did not know, and that literally was the consensus across the board, because they still cannot find any clots anywhere. They want to do further testing now that I'm out of the hospital, but they couldn't find clots anywhere. All of my tests came back clear. All of my blood tests came back fine. I didn't have hypertension. I didn't have diabetes. I didn't have high blood pressure. My cholesterol was in the middle. It's like, this is low, this the middle, this is high. My cholesterol was in the middle, and by the time I left, my cholesterol was where it needed to be. So I didn't have high cholesterol, so there were no real factors that were standing out to let them know, or to kind of lead them in a direction to say, okay, this is why this happened. So what does that place us now? Now we're still with the treatment. So now I am discharged from the doctor, and they want to have a procedure on me, or do a procedure as to where they stick a microscope down my throat to try to have a closer look at the heart, to see if they see any holes in the heart in spaces that they weren't able to see it in during like the MRI and things like that. So the other thing is they have me on, well, they prescribe me different medicines. Let me see, what's my medicine list at? So for the cholesterol, they gave me a cholesterol pill. I guess they're like, just in case your cholesterol goes up, we want to kind of keep it in check, which is a Lipitor. I've never been on any kind of long-term pills, and I don't expect to. We're not gonna start now. So immediately when I saw these medications, I automatically thought of natural ways to replace these man-made medications. So Lipitor is cholesterol. They're it's a lot of natural ways to lower your cholesterol. So that's something that I'm prepared to do. And when I took the Lipitor at the hospital, it made me feel very, 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 very crappy. I was paranoid all night that I was gonna have another stroke, because it made me feel so similar to how I felt when I got up the day that I realized something was wrong. So I'm not interested in dealing with the Lipitor. They also prescribed me Plavix as a blood thinner, and they gave me the blood thinner because they're like, well, we don't know if you have a clot, but if you do have a clot, the Plavix is going to thin your blood out so that the blood won't clot, and you won't have to worry about this happening, especially when we're still trying to figure out what happened, so that we can have the correct form of treatment for you. Now with Plavix, it's a blood thinner. There are very natural things that you can eat that replaces Plavix as a blood thinner. Berries as a whole does that, but we're not about to get into that. Another thing that they prescribed me was vitamin B12. So they prescribed me vitamin B12 for the obvious reasons. My B12 was low. And then they prescribed me iron. So these are all medications that they want me to take together, and things like that I'm not feeling. I'm just not. But these are the medications that they gave me, so that's what I'm telling y'all. So they sent me home with 4 medications. So because they don't have any clue as to why this happened, how this happened, why they can't find any reasoning for it, they have me doing a whole lot of things between now and the next month. So I have to go see a neurologist, I have to go see a hematologist and an oncologist and a cardiovascular doctor, as well as following up with my primary doctor in about a week. So along with all of that, because their thought process, I do believe, is that it's a clot someplace that they just can't see, or they think that I might have had like an arrhythmia in my heart, not so much a clot, but I might have had an arrhythmia that happened that triggered the mini stroke. They have me now wearing a cardiac monitor for the next month. The cardiac monitor is connected to this little phone right here that I have to carry around with me everywhere I go. I can shower with it and all this stuff. I slept like a baby last night, so I'm not really tripping on that. But this cardiac monitor is monitoring my heartbeats. Now, when I was in the hospital, my heartbeats were fine and regular the whole entire time. So I don't anticipate any changes between now and a month. But if there are any changes, this cardiac monitor will catch it. Now, the other thing that the doctor said was if in a month they don't see any changes in my heart with the cardiac monitor, then they want to do a procedure where they put an implant in my chest that then will be like an internal cardiac monitor, and that can stay in for 2 years. Y'all already know how I feel about that. I'm just telling you what they told me. So this whole ordeal was very, very life-changing, and it definitely put me in a different type of mind frame where it's like, okay, you can't take everything for granted. People take little things for granted, just like sitting in the house doing nothing. People take all kind of things for granted, but this was definitely an eye-opening experience for me. It's very frustrating to go into the hospital for something like this, to be told that you had a stroke, but they don't know why you had a stroke, and for them to literally do all of these tests on you, and it gets them no closer to an answer. It's very frustrating. People who have TIAs, people say, well, you know, they can go on, that's like a warning sign that, you know, it's another stroke that's going to happen. And so that's the biggest thing right now, is the fact that they don't know. So they don't know how to properly treat it because they don't know why it happened. So now they want to do like a lot of things to try to, you know, figure it out. And I do appreciate that effort because I want an answer. This is not something that happens just because. Now, there are times where if a stroke is just doesn't have a cause for it, they have a name for that. I put it up somewhere. And that basically just like, you had a stroke, but we don't know why. And that is scary to be like, okay, if it can happen once, it can happen again, but it might happen never again, because the reasoning behind why I had it is unknown right now. The reason why a lot of other people might have a stroke or a mini stroke, there are reasons behind it. Some people might have a hole in their heart they don't know about. Some people have high blood pressure, hypertension. Some people have high cholesterol and things like that that attribute to them going into the space of being able to have a stroke. It could be drugs, it could be tobacco use, a lot of different things that you could be like, okay, I know that this is why you had this. But to be put in a hospital and they do all of these tests and they literally, you leaving and they're no closer to an answer, that's very, very frustrating for me, period. So I myself am going to just start eating cleaner and continuing doing the things that I was already doing, and incorporate different foods that are going to replace those medications. My biggest thing with the blood thinner was, if you have me on a blood thinner and then I stop taking the blood thinner because you tell me you don't have to take the blood thinner because the blood thinner is not needed because your blood doesn't clot, because they did tests that had, the results haven't come back yet, that they said will show if my blood has a propensity to clot, and if it does, then I have to be on blood thinners for the rest of my life. This is somebody who's never been on any type of long-term medication. Me, never. And it was almost like when every doctor that I told that I never been on medication, it's like they were rubbing their hands because this was the opportunity to make me have me on medication, because I don't take any medication. And that's another issue that I be having with hospitals and doctors, but like I said, we're not going to get into that. So one of the craziest things with this is that I feel fine. Not only do I feel fine, but I felt fine. When I got to the hospital, being at the hospital for about 2 hours, I felt the way I felt this whole entire time before any of this happened. When my whole stay at the hospital, I felt absolutely fine. I got drained when I was getting the blood transfusion, but that's to be expected because that's normally how I feel when I'm getting the blood transfusion. But there was nothing, there was no feeling that I had that something had just gone terribly wrong. All of my functions and my mental faculties were still there. I was still able to do everything on my own, and that was just another thing that was so frustrating. I wanted an answer. I wanted an answer, and they couldn't give me an answer because it was showing no answers. You know, the only answer that they could give me was that this did happen. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen again, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen again. And that's the scariest part about it. And my biggest thing when I left the hospital was that I didn't want to feel like I was a ticking time bomb. And I kind of left the hospital kind of feeling like that. I'm still going through the process of getting my mind in a place where it's like, you can't let this define you, and you can't sit and try to hone in on everything that you're feeling. It's like, okay, well, I got a little dull headache, so is this it? Is it happening again? Who knows? It may never happen again. I don't know, but I can't dwell on the unknown. I can't stress over things that I don't have any control over. Another scary thing was that it happened when I was asleep. Had I not sat up and said anything, which a lot of times I would get up and I sit in silence. Had I not said anything, so much time could have passed before I even realized what was going on. It was so many factors when I think back on it. I'm like, that was super duper scary. So understand that it can happen to anybody at any time for any reason, even for no reason. Apparently it could be for an unknown reason or an underlying reason that they simply just have not found out yet. And so it's just scary as a whole to have gone through something like this, and then you're no closer to an answer when you get out the hospital. A whole hospital that has the capabilities to figure it out, and they are not able to figure it out, and it's not because of their lack of trying to. They have been trying very, very hard, and they're still trying hard with all of the things that they have me doing, following up my hospital visits to still try to figure out as to why this happened. So I just say this to say I wanted to do this video because I know that there might be a lot of people who have had TIAs, but I don't know if it's a lot of people who had TIAs and it really only showed that they had a TIA with no reasoning as to why. And just to let you know that it does happen. You can have a mini stroke and they might not be able to find out why. And you have to wrap your mind around that and live with the knowledge that it happened, and they don't know why and you don't know why. It's a possibility that throughout all of these things that they're going to be having me doing, that they will find an answer, and I want them to find an answer. But if an answer is not found, that's something that I have to sit and be okay with and still be able to push through my life and do all of the things that I already had planned to do. But I tell you what, it moved me in a way. I don't feel like this was a negative thing. I don't look at events like this or a lot of things that a lot of people might view as negative. Sometimes you'll get set back to spring forward. And so sometimes the universe will remind you that you need to move. If you're not moving correctly in life and you're not moving the way that you're supposed to be moving, sometimes the universe will move you. And I feel like I've been moved.